Fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests. Our next speaker is Toastmaster Moira O'Brien with a speech entitled A Tidal Tale. With a speech entitled A Tidal Tale, please welcome Toastmaster Moira O'Brien.
Oh, there you are. Have you ever made a decision that you later came to regret? Mr. Contest Chair, fellow Toastmasters and most welcome guests, please check the tide before you decide on your destination. The sun shone on the Solent on this beautiful sunny Saturday afternoon. My brother-in-law and I were on my little sailing boat. Yeah, this is it, here. A 4-berth cruiser for an afternoon sailing, and we were going to sail down to the town of Lymington on the Solent. And the Solent is that great big beautiful bit of water beloved by sailors all over the world between the Isle of Wight and the English mainland. Now, the wind was very light and the sun was shining and it was warm, so I didn't really need all this equipment, so let's get rid of it. And we sailed down on the tide, so the tide was with us and it was taking us down very nicely. But then later on the tide changed, and now instead of being behind us, it was going against us, and with the light winds we were not making enough way to get to Lymington. And we were very near to Newtown Creek. So we said, right, we'll go and spend the night in Newtown Creek, because it's a nice little anchorage, gets a bit crowded, but we'll find a space. So we took down the sails, put on the iron sail and motored into the creek. We found a little space just big enough for us to anchor and give a bit of swinging room. And we got ready for the evening. Now, time to go to the pub, have a bevy or two, and of course have some dinner. So we go and we pump up the dinghy. Okay, dinghy's pumped up, jump in, and then we can row upriver until we get to the jetty. We then tie the dinghy up to the jetty and we climb up and we set off for the pub, just a few yards away, no distance at all. Now, the pub was full of yachties, all of whom they were extolling their yachting exploits of the day, how wonderful they were. And of course, we were no different. We sat down and we had a very pleasant meal, and 10 o'clock, time to return back to the boat. So we go out to the pub and we walk back to where the dinghy was tied up, and oh my God, where's the dinghy? Now, I'm going to stop here and give you just a little bit of science. Now, you all know that tides go in and out. Everybody knows that. But actually, what they do is actually they go up and they go down every 12 hours or so. Well, there is also something called spring tides. When the moon is full, or when the moon is new, the tides not only go up, they go up a long way, and they go down a long way. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a full moon. There was no water in the river. The dinghy was hanging vertically from its mooring rope. Well, there was nothing for it. Untie the dinghy, drop it down into the mud, clamber down into the mud, squelch, 6 inches of mud, And between the two of us, we had to pick the dinghy up and carry it down the river, or the riverbed as it was. Well, after about 100 yards of hard work, there was a little trickle of water, so we could just put it down and drag rather than carrying. And then a little bit further down, there was enough water to float it. But whereas the mud to start with was about that deep, the mud was now about that deep. And every step was squelch, squelch. Have you ever tried pulling your foot out of a foot of mud? I tell you folks, it's hard work. Well, we got back to the boat. The next thing was to clean off the mud from the shoes and the legs, because they were absolutely caked in mud. But we managed, and we got back on board, had a little nightcap, and off to bed, sleeping soundly. Until about 3 o'clock in the morning, I was awoken with a start. What on earth was that? Leaping out of bed, I scrambled up onto deck to see that my boat was floating with its lifting keel, but the boat next door, which had a non-lifting keel, was still firmly stuck in the mud. And the wind had got up, and every time we swung on our anchor, we hit the boat next door. Well, you can imagine this was embarrassing. So what did I do? I managed to grab the dinghy on its painter, pulled it round between the two boats, tied it up, and hoped that we didn't damage the dinghy every time the boat swang and bounced off the rubber dinghy. Back to bed, back to sleep, thank God. Up in the morning, and lo and behold, I had to eat humble pie and apologise to our neighbours, who were very kind about it. And we upped anchor and sailed off into the morning mist. My fellow Toastmasters, when you set out on a journey in life, make sure that you know what you are likely to encounter on the way to your destination. Check the tide before you decide. Mr. Contest Chair.